Good afternoon, and welcome to Smithsonian Gardens' weekly webinar series, Let's Talk Gardens. Only today, your thumb is not going to get greener, you're going to get craftier. You're going to understand what it takes to go out into your garden, pick some flowers, add them to some collections that you buy at the grocery store or wherever, and create a beautiful holiday centerpiece. So with me today is Christine Price-Avalo, and she's going to be our designer extraordinaire. And she's being helped by a coworker, Sarah Dickert, who's going to be monitoring the camera from downtown in Washington, D.C. and Smithsonian Gardens headquarters. And today we're trying something totally different. We have never gone live with a demonstration before, so please pardon any type of little hiccups that we have, but we're excited to try a new presentation style and give you some new information to help you out with your garden. So the first thing we wanted to do is to tell you that all questions should be put in the chat box, please. And we have a question for you right now. What is your favorite flower to use in a centerpiece for the holidays or any time at all? So please go ahead and in the chat box, let us know what your favorite flower is for using in a centerpiece. If you've never made a centerpiece before, just say, I don't know. Although, here we go. So from heritage roses to dahlias, two great ideas of using in a centerpiece. And Tanya says, I don't know, which would be my answer because I might have a green thumb in the garden, but my centerpiece styles definitely are lacking. So poinsettia, oh, we are getting all kinds of good ideas. So we can look at this afterwards, Christine, and we can see what kinds of other flowers that you may consider to put in their centerpiece. So thank you for that. We're going to move on now. Christine is going to start us off with a brief little PowerPoint presentation, and then we're going to jump into the live demonstration. So I am going to share my screen. And start in the slideshow. And Christine, why don't you go ahead and let us know what we're learning about? And then you're going to nod when you tell me that you want me to move you on to the next slide.
Sure. Thank you, Cindy. Hi, everyone. My name is Christine Avalo. I'm a horticulturist here at Smithsonian Gardens. And today I'm going to be showing and sharing some tips and tricks for making holiday centerpieces. Today we're focusing specifically on a sort of a fall, autumnal kind of theme, maybe Thanksgiving table arrangement, something like that. In a couple of weeks from now, we'll be focusing on more holiday oriented, Christmas in particular oriented arrangements, things like that. So we're using a lot of fall materials today. And as Cindy mentioned, I collected some of these from our grounds and gardens here at the Smithsonian, and some of them I even in my home garden, and then some of the items I purchased from the grocery store and the florist and places like that as well. I also have a lot of the tools and items that you need for floral arrangements, which I'll introduce to you and share them with you while we're doing the live demonstration. So I thought we'd start off first with a PowerPoint presentation, just kind of familiarizing people the basics of floral design techniques in case people haven't had courses in it or things like that. So we're going to proceed to the PowerPoint presentation. So the first slide that you see on here is actually about tablescapes. I'm going to make a tablescape arrangement, and when I say tablescape, it includes, florals, a little bit of dry materials, acorns, pine cones, things like that. A larger scale centerpiece that I would use in the middle of my dining room table. On a normal basis, I kind of change it out with the seasons. It's done on a tray, and this one does not use wet foam or fresh flowers. It's more of a long-term display, but it kind of sets the mood for your whole table or your dining room or entertaining experience. It includes the flowers and then usually candles, and then I didn't do it today, but the dinnerware and the placemats and things like that. But I will show you composition that I'm making with gourds and some branches and pine cones and things like that. That's quick and easy stuff collected, stuff I already had that you can make at home and leave out for several weeks. And then when I do this talk in a couple of weeks, I'll use the same container and switch it over to a more traditional holiday display at that time. So that'll be the first part. And the first slide just explains about tablescapes and kind of setting the mood for your dinner parties. In our next slide here, it's about color theory. I think color design and coordinating colors and things like that is one of the hardest techniques for people with any type of crafting, whether it's floral design or sewing or paper crafting or just anything, even home decorating. It's hard for people to coordinate colors. And when you get it sort of synchronized and it all works well, then it's beautiful. But if you have clashing colors and things like that, it can look a little awkward and maybe doesn't meet the expectation you had when you started the design project. This is easy right now because with fall colors, it's shades of, you'll see in the slides, orange, burgundy, brown, maroon, dark greens, yellows, golden tones, things like that. But with the color theory, you can decide if you want to do contrasting colors like red, green, orange, purple, things like that. Or if you want to do an arrangement where it's sort of monochromatic, all different shades of burgundy or all different shades of orange in it or something like that. And it's really up to you. But I would suggest that you, as you think about arrangements and design and all, where the arrangement is going to be placed, what room, and maybe a little bit about the formality of the room or the feel of the room so that you can set the arrangement tone to match what's in your house already or the person you're giving it to, just to kind of keep things coordinated. So I think it takes a little practice to do that, but I think just working with color is the key to having a successful arrangement. When we start to make the project, you'll see I've got all the supplies laid out on this table in front of me, but I've got things like the clippers that we need. I've got a knife right here. I've got scissors. I've got tape and wire and picks, some water. All my containers are already set up here with foam and stuff in them and candle holders and things like that. So I think if you can gather up all the supplies you think you're going to need and then maybe a few extra, it'll just be easier rather than interrupting the project and having to run back and forth or hunt for items when you need them. So I have way more stuff here than we're ever going to use today, but that way everything's in this room and I'm not interrupting the creative flow of things to go hunt down a kitchen knife or a pair of pruners that I need to cut stems with or things like that. So I will include the list of supplies or suggested supplies and materials. It'll be posted on our website later, as with this slide presentation and the video. So if you want to review it and then make your own arrangement later on, you needn't be taking all these notes or trying to memorize what I'm saying. It'll all be posted later. So for easy access for viewing and sort of pausing and following along with the project. In the next slide, I have a few fall color combinations. These are all from Floral Arrangements and stuff like that. If you just Google up fall arrangements, you can see they're all in the burgundy, brown, orange tones, and that's what we're going to be working with today. But I did that just for some inspiration. You'll see in two of the projects that I'm going to make, or actually three of them are very similar to what's in these pictures here. Cornucopia display, kind of traditional fall one I'm going to do real quick. A pumpkin that I carved out. Started that project. I'll do that one first, just to give everybody a feel for that. And those are kind of traditional fall arrangements. And then one that has candles in it if people are interested in seeing how to incorporate candles into a dining room arrangement. In the next slide, I have a few tips just for kind of creating arrangements, not to be scared, or just suggestions here to kind of put people at ease for making the project. If you notice in the pictures and when I start making the display, you'll see I'm using a variety of products. I have probably, one arrangement might have 15 or 20 different items in it by the time you're done. So if you can use a small amount of lots of different items and then repeat those items throughout the arrangement. Just kind of adds continuity to the project by repeating them. It's good to use odd numbers if you're doing something with a round arrangement or sort of a front view arrangement, working in odd numbers. And then think about how the arrangement's going to be viewed. If we make a round arrangement, just put in the middle of a round table, it's viewed from all sides. So we want all the sides looking the same. If we're making an oblong arrangement, which is one of the containers I have here, you're going to want to make it low and flat and to fit a rectangle shaped table that way. And I have the pumpkin, which is kind of whimsical one, or maybe viewed just from one side, not all sides, thinking about the placement of the flowers on that. These flowers should last for about a week or so. The foliage might last longer. You want to make sure you water them. Every couple of days, pour a little water over top of the foam or put it in the sink maybe so it's a little neater and tidier. Also, with some of the containers that I'm going to show you, they may not be waterproof. So you want to make sure you put these arrangements on a plate or something waterproof if you're going to put it on a wood surface so you don't leave a mark on the table or anything like that. And some of them are lined with plastic, so they should be fine as well. And then I just encourage you to go a little bit out of your comfort zone and try something new. I mean, we can always start over again. We can, tweak it a little bit, or we can just keep practicing with things. So try something different, try something new, and don't be scared or nervous about trying it. These are all things you can purchase again. We can buy extra. They're pretty reasonably priced for making the arrangements. And as in the next slide, I have a little bit about shapes of arrangements, which I covered just a second ago, but a couple of them are, like an oval or rectangle, a full round arrangement, cascading or S-shape arrangement. If you were doing that, you'd want to use an upright container that would allow a little bit of height for things to kind of cascade down in the front of the arrangement. And I have a container I can show you for that, which I don't know if I'll have time to make it, but if I was doing a cascading arrangement or an S shape, I'd want to use something like this to give it a little more height. There's also like symmetricals, sort of a right angle triangle, or just a triangle shape in general if you want to make sort of a front viewed only type of arrangement. One of the keys for doing these centerpieces, except for the tablescape one I'm doing, is working with foam. In this slide, you can see I have picked several pictures of what is called Oasis foam, and let me grab it for you real quick. Wet foam is another name for it. We all kind of call it Oasis, but this particular one, not to endorse the brand or anything, but it just says wet foam. I buy this at the craft store. You can buy it online, which is what I did, and had it mailed to me at this time. It comes in this format. It's very light and airy. It feels almost like styrofoam. You want to soak it in water, but you lay it in a container or lay it in the sink of water and let it naturally soak up the water. You don't want to take your hands and plunge it in the water and try to soak it that way. It's best if you can soak this foam overnight, just to make sure all the pockets get filled up with water. And when it's wet, I have one here where it's already been soaked, it's wet, and then I'm ready to cut it and shape it for the arrangement. It cuts very easily. You can use a knife or a piece of wire, which I'll show you in a couple of minutes, to cut the foam, and then we'll secure it into the containers. A word of caution, the foam is very fragile. So the least amount of time that you can jab things into the foam or pull things back out, it's better for the arrangement. It adds stability, because each time you poke a hole in it or pull something out, you're actually sort of degrading the foam and breaking it up. So we want to make sure we're measuring and kind of eyeballing things before we go jabbing them in, and that we use little pieces of the plant materials. We don't need to use big chunks. We just want to barely put the stems in the foam without tearing it up, and that'll help us be able to put more things into the arrangement by being careful with the stems. As we do the arrangement, you'll see how I place the flowers in what order they go in, with big flowers, little flowers, and then filler materials kind of balancing it out. With floral design, you want to make sure you're keeping things in proportion. With this next slide, you can see it's important that we sort of balance and keep the centerpieces in proportion to the containers, and that if we are doing something that's supposed to be viewed all the way around, that it's evenly balanced. It doesn't have bare spots or big chunks of stuff on one side. It's sort of repeated throughout the arrangement. With a low arrangement, such as this one that I'll make in a minute, that's going to be an oval or rectangle shaped arrangement, you want to make sure that you're doing that it can be long and thin, but you don't want to build it up high. I think as a dinner guest, one of the things I find most annoying about centerpieces is when they're too high at the table and then you can't see around them or over them, and you wind up having to move them out. So we just want to keep things low on the table so people can have a conversation around the arrangement and not have to feel like it's blocking their view or blocking their conversations. With tall arrangements, you can do 1.5 to 2 times the height of the container, and that will still keep it in balance of the overall finished product without making it look top heavy or showing too much of the bottom container. And we'll cover up some of the bottom container with the cascading plant material that way. So, and you'll see as I assemble it how it all goes together in a few minutes. In the last slide here, I'm talking about a little bit about balancing the arrangements. If you're doing something that's symmetrical, it's the same on both sides and it's evenly spaced. But if you're going to do something that's a little bit asymmetrical, sort of abstract or unusual, you can have all the weight in one corner and then kind of have it getting lighter toward the edges. That would be like something like a right angle arrangement where the heavy point is at the bottom of the L and then it tapers out lightly on the ends, or even like an S or a crescent shaped arrangement where it looks like a C and the heavy part is at the bottom and then it sort of drifts outward from there, or at the center of the S with arrangements going each direction. So the ones I'm going to make today are all pretty basic. They're not going to be, anything abstract or anything out of the normal, but those are just kind of what I normally make. I tend to kind of go for more traditional types of arrangements in the everything that I usually make. So that's it for the slide presentation. We're going to move on to the hands-on demonstration here in just a second, and we'll be switching the camera to the live video.
Yep, but first I wanted to say I'm so impressed. You are a horticulturist at American Indian Museum. How did you ever learn how to do all these things to be able to do flower arrangements? I mean, this is another talent I haven't seen on your side.
It's for me, really, it was just sort of practicing at home. I took floral design in college, basic floral design, and I remember we learned all these shapes each week. We concentrated on a different type of arrangement. I really enjoyed it. I worked when I was in high school and the first couple summers of college at a wholesale florist, just prepping flowers, putting together orders for floral shops and stuff like that, but not actually doing arrangements. So really it's just practice and just sort of a hobby, I guess, that I kind of always like to do, just making flower arrangements on my own. I've never worked in a flower shop or done it professionally, but I do enjoy it. And I usually make at this time of year and through the month of December at the holiday time, I'll get together with my neighbors and we'll have set up our picnic tables and just cut greens out of our own yard. And we each make maybe between 10 and 15 arrangements, and we give them to our other neighbors and our family members and stuff like that. So I just enjoy it, but I've never worked in a floral design professionally.
Thank you. And I know you're going to impress everyone, so I'm going to go ahead and disappear. We're going to turn you over to Sarah Dick and the camera there in the room. So thank you so much. I'll check up with you at the end and I'll ask you the questions that are being put in the chat box.
Sure. Thank you. First, I'm going to show you about the foam. I know I mentioned earlier about just working with the foam and preparing it in the containers and all of that. So this is a block of oasis that was soaked in water. It comes in this size. It's probably about, it's like almost like a regular brick if you can see it, and I'm punching fingerprints on it as I'm holding it. It fits perfectly into this container that I'm using that's shaped like a pumpkin here. And then I've got a kitchen knife, and I'm going to just shave the foam off. It's important when you're doing this is the first step, that you allow the foam to be about an inch or maybe a half an inch above the rim of the container. That allows you more surface area for arranging the flowers, especially if you want to try to hide the base of the container. If it's flush or even below that, you just don't have the surface area to put the stems in. So you just want to cut it. It's better to cut it conservatively and then shave it down rather than cutting it all, kind of eyeballing it and taking a chance of taking off too much in the beginning. So I'm going to shave this down a little bit here, about a half an inch. And it cuts very easily. You can even use a wire to cut it. This one actually should have had a little more water in it. It's got a dry pocket. You really want to make sure you soak the foam. I soaked this before class. It's not quite saturated. You can see the light part right there. So I'll add water on it later, but it's important that we do that because as the stems go in here, if it's a dry pocket like this is not going to give the stem any water. So you really want to make sure you soak it. This only soaked for like an hour. Probably should have soaked a couple of hours, but the rest of them I soaked overnight. So I know they're good. So you can see it's just barely poking above the pumpkin here. And then you want to use tape. This is not Scotch tape. This is not stem tape that you buy. This one is actually called floral tape. It's almost like a canvas material. It's very tacky. It's like the duct tape of the floral design world, we will call it. It's very tacky. It holds in wet conditions. You want to put a little bit across the container, holding it in place, and let it come down about a half inch to an inch on each side. That part gets hidden by the stem so you don't see it. I normally do this, and instead of making an X or a T, I sort of make an off-centered one, because we're going to, invariably, we're going to want to put our focal points in the middle of the container or near the middle. So if you put the X or the T in the covering up the exact center, you can't put the stem there. So that's kind of why I'm offsetting them a little bit. And this makes it easier for transport. If you intend on carrying this arrangement to another person's house or moving it around your house a little bit, the tape is what's keeping it secure and keeping it from moving around and tipping over. And you can see here how I've got it taped off. That one. I'm going to set that one aside because I prepped this one at home, because part of it is greening up I call it greening the arrangement. And that's when we're going to take our greenery, mainly like our fern branches, and I have some laurel that I cut in my yard, and some nandina and stuff like that, and a little bit of white pine that I cut. I cut it into small pieces, and I basically want to cover up all the foam and all the components of it, so you can't see that anymore. It's hidden. What you want to do is make sure you're using bare stems. If you can see this piece of baker fern here, I've cleaned off anything off the bottom of it, so it's got a good clean base to go into the foam, and cutting it off like that. And I'll put it into this one, since this one doesn't have any indent right here. And then we'll want to put it into the foam, gently poking it in. And when I say greening the container, normally what that involves is covering the whole container with a light layer of greenery. It doesn't mean covering it solidly, but just enough to kind of cover up the base a little bit and give you a good foundation for the colorful flowers showing up better in it. And each time I'm making sure I have a good stem and a good cut on there. So it's easily goes in and isn't taking up too much space. Now these pieces are just basic ones to start off with. As I start to build the arrangement out, I'm going to be a little more selective in the types of branches that I'm going to use on it. Since I want this to be a rectangle arrangement, it's going to be longer than wide. So I'm going to go ahead and put a nice long tip with a beautiful end on it on each side. That's the end of the fern frond. Where I'm using the middle pieces in other areas, we just want to make sure we get this triangle shape, the beautiful part kind of coming out on the two ends. And that's going to give it the definition of an oblong type of arrangement. See, it's kind of taking on it's not quite as wide as it is long. And I'm going to put these in just all around it at different angles, just kind of hiding up the foam. And I'm going to set this one aside real quick and bring the pumpkin back that I had worked on earlier, because I really want to demonstrate with the flowers and everything on the pumpkin. And I'll come back and finish that one in a few minutes. This is a pie pumpkin that I got back at Halloween, and I still had it. I never cut it at Halloween. So I pulled it out over the last couple of days. I scooped all the seeds out of the pumpkin, all the junk. I wiped this down with bleach solution inside and out, and the lid as well, to keep it from rotting, and that keeps it fresh longer. So if you're going to work with any containers, just make sure you clean them up well ahead of time and get rid of anything that might cause it to rot, especially if you're using gourds or pumpkins or fruit, things like that. And I'm going to incorporate the lid of the pumpkin into the arrangement, which was in one of the slides we saw earlier. These are kebab sticks that I'm using. I'm going to use 2 of them. I'm going to poke it up in the lid. And I cut it a little bit so it wouldn't be too long. And if I need to trim it again, I will. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I'm going to use 2 just to make sure it's good and stable. And I'm actually looking at the front of the arrangement, but I'll turn it around for you in just a second here so you can see what I see. Okay, and I'm going to leave the lid propped to the side. This is going to be the front of the arrangement, about right here. And then you're going to see the lid as part of the arrangement on the finished product. Now I'm going to add some flowers into the pumpkin arrangement. And I've got a bunch of mums and solidago and things like that I brought in to work with today. These are some chrysanthemums. They actually look like sunflowers. I got them at the florist shop. I'm cleaning off the end a little bit on them. And you can see this was one branch. It would be very tempting and easy to just grab this branch and shove it right in there and try to do it in a hurry. And I'm sure it would make a nice arrangement too. But I'm actually going to break this down. I'm going to cut it into multiple little flowers off of each one of these little stems here. And by the time I get ready to put this big piece in, it's actually only going to be 3 little flowers that go in at once. And I'm going to kind of put this one right here in the middle, kind of poking up. By the time it gets in there, it's right down. I'm going to trim it just a little bit more. And then I'm going to add a couple more. I'm repeating the same mums around the arrangement in a couple different spots here. Each time I'm cutting the stem on an angle using the pruners. An angle gives it more surface area for soaking up water. So you just want to, instead of cutting the stems flat and flush, cut them on an angle. It's always good to give them a fresh cut and submerge the flowers in water, the stems in water before you begin to work with them too, just to kind of give them a little life. And I bought these a couple days ago, so they've been soaking for several days at this point. This one is another chrysanthemum that I'm going to add into the arrangement. This one is a sort of a russet color. This one has a bunch of leaves on the base. Just make sure that you always remove the leaves from the base of the flowers before you stick them in. This is true with water arrangements too. If you don't, then they can collect and cause some algae and mold to form in there. This tight is a little bit tight, so I'm actually going to remove a couple of these flowers on it before I poke it in to give it a little more space. If you can give some space around the flowers so you can see them better, it just looks better, easier to see. I'm going to put this little brown clump right back here on the back side of the lid, and I'll turn this around in just a second for you guys to see how it's starting to fill out. And if you notice, I'm making sure to give space between the flowers. So when they open up, they actually have room to fully open up over the next couple of days and kind of fill out and not be so crammed and jammed up in there. Back here. Kind of see how I'm working around the arrangement on it. This is actually some pine cones that are preserved kind of in the dried flowers section. I'm going to add a couple of these in there just to give it a little more texture and kind of give it a fall boost. And if you're looking closely, you can see I'm actually pulling them off the stem just to use little pieces instead of using this whole big spray in one chunk. I am going to cut it a little bit. I'm using these pruners. They're heavy duty, so they will cut through the wire in a way that scissors won't, so that makes it easier. Oops. We hope they cut through wire. There we go. And it's a little piece that's a little more proportioned to the arrangement by cutting it down a little. I like these because they do add a little bit of sparkle to the arrangement, which is always nice if you're going to have any candlelight or anything like that on it. These are on a wire, so they are a little bit flexible and bendable. And I'm tucking them, just kind of tucking them in around the arrangement. I'm going to use 3 or 4 of them. Add one more. It's almost finished. I think I'm going to go ahead and add a few of these red hypericum berries in here just to add a little splash of color for fun in the arrangement here. I could continue to add a lot more things to this and really fill it out and add, you know, the eucalyptus and these other things I have here, but this one's kind of, don't want to go too crazy on it, but I think this red will be a nice addition. One more piece. I want to make sure that it's moved all around the arrangement, so I'm just going to add a couple pieces in the front here, and then I'll be finished with this one, and I'll turn it back around and show you the final product here in a second. So I'm just going to put this one more little hypericum right down here. It's going right beside the yellow flowers. It's the focal point of the arrangement in the front here. And I'll move a couple of these branches away so you can see it a little bit better. But this one was kind of quick and easy, fun arrangement using a pumpkin here that I saved. And I'm going to move this to the side, and I'm going to quickly do the tablescape, which does not involve the foam. It's just a type of a dry arrangement. And then at the end, we can show you these samples again. So I'm going to move everything over here that I need for the tablescape arrangement quickly. And I'm going to push these things over to the side just so that visually you can still see it without having a lot of distractions. This is all dried material, a couple artificial items I'm using, and I'll show you the container here in just a second that I've got. You could also add candles or lights to this if you wanted. We're in the building and we're not allowed to have candles in here, but I have the cups for them to show, just give you an idea. This is just a wooden type of tray box that I am repurposing and making into a centerpiece arrangement for the table. I use it on my dining room. It had actually been sitting on there for a long time, the whole year actually, with different things in it. These are pine branches that I cut from my yard, white pine. I'm just gonna lay them in the bottom of the tray here to soften it up a little bit. I'm only adding 2. This is a little bit of Nandina that I cut from my yard. It's got a little fall color on it there that's kind of burgundy tones to it. I'm just laying them on top of each other in the container there. For fragrance, this is a little bit of bayberry in here. And let me cut this one down a little bit. This is another piece of bayberry right here. And then I'm going to tuck in these cups. These are candle cups. I won't light them, but I'll lay them in the arrangement here, right up the board here. And I'm going to turn the arrangement around in just a second when I move some of these items out so you can see it lengthwise. But I've got these artificial grape clusters here that are a little bit glittery. It's always nice to have some glitter when you're working with candles. So I'm just laying them in the board. And I'm going to trim this one little branch off in case we were using candles. We wouldn't want it to be touching. These are pine cones that I collected through my yard and just had them in a vase at home. I'm just going to lay them on here on the board in a kind of random fashion here. There's several different shapes and colors to them. These are a couple of gourds I had left from Halloween. I'm going to add them in here as well. Repeating the colors, especially the bright orange ones throughout the arrangement here. Another one maybe here. These are a couple of artificial little crab apples. They're kind of a bright red color for a few splashes. I have one more gourd that needs a home right here. And I'm going to move these things out the way and then rotate the whole arrangement so that you can see the finished product of it. Now I might rest it on a few branches or a fancy table runner, something like that. But you can kind of see, and normally I have candles in here, so this is just a quick, easy arrangement. It should last for several weeks in here without having to do anything to it. You can, and especially because some of it's artificial, some of it's real. So, and I'm gonna add one more little branch here to kind of cover that stem a little bit right there. And one piece over here to balance it out a little bit since we have it on the one side. Like that. Can you get a good shot of it? Good. So that's another one that's can stay up for several weeks, easy to use and great for tablescaping. We've got about 10 more minutes. So I think I'll go ahead and I'll make one more centerpiece. You can see how I'm making it and adding candles to it for that. And then we'll have time for about 10 minutes of questions and answers at the end. I'm going to continue with this oval shaped arrangement here that we started on in the beginning of the program, since I've already got the base going on it. Let me get my little candle picks. I put it over here. Now I want this arrangement to have a candle in the center of it. So I've got the candle. This is the pick for it. This is just a taper candle. You could add two to it or one to it. This matches the container. It's kind of a cream colored. This one's not that big, so I think I'm just going to go with one today. But this secures the candle, because you always want to be careful using candles around your live greenery. Never leave it unattended, but just poke it right down in the center. This is a good height for it, and then you can work with the greenery around it at that point without, it kind of gives you an idea of how tall you can go without being a danger of catching fire or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got the baker fern in there, and I'm going to use this white pine here, a few pieces of that. Just, I like its soft texture, and it's easy to fill up space with, and has a good fragrance. Pine will last a long time too in arrangements. And you can see I basically dissected this whole stem into all these little pieces that I'm going to plug in to the arrangement here. Keeping in the oval oblong fashion, I'm going to put some longer stems coming out each end. Do a little shorter one on each side. And then just filling in with a couple more little sprigs of greenery there. I'm going to go back and add a few more pieces of baker fern to the arrangement to hide the foam a little bit better before we move on to the flowers with this one. It's great if you have a cake stand or a Lazy Susan that you can use to, when you're making flower arrangements. It's helpful to turn it and use something like that to kind of get a view of each side of the arrangement and kind of how it's looking, and also visual on the base of the container. Like, is it hidden? It looks like I need a couple more pieces on the base here to hide that foam edge. So I'm just grabbing a different variety of foliage that I have cut. This one's laurel, some cherry laurel branches that I'll poke in to kind of hide some of the foam on the base. And I'm going to add just a couple more before I add the flowers in on this one. It looks like it maybe could use a little bit right here. And I just cut them down to use small pieces. They're about I'd say 4 inches long, nothing too large. I'm going to hold this up in just a second so you can see how it's coming along. Add one more piece here on the side to kind of hide that foam. But you can see it's getting filled out. When you look down on it, you really can't see too much of the foam. I do need to add a couple more pieces along the edges, which we'll add at the very end. I'm going to add a couple of these roses to this arrangement here. These are long stem roses, and I'm just going to be cutting them down. I'm taking off all the foliage on them so we have good stems to work with. If the petals are damaged, you can just pull off a couple of them easily right from the base and give it a fresher look. I'll take those 2 off. It doesn't hurt them or anything like that. And I'm going to actually cut this a little bit shorter. Since this is probably going to be viewed from each side, I'm going to poke a rose on each side of the arrangement. I'll add a little more greenery around the flowers at the end. This can be a focal point on each side of the arrangement. This I will pull a couple of these petals off just to freshen it up and make it look a little better there. And take off any of the leaves. And if you notice, the flowers are sunk into the arrangement. They're not poking out of line with the other flowers. They're all sort of in the same shape. Oops. It's like I knew I had one more rose. Just had to dig it out there. Again, I'll take off a couple petals easily on it. They got a little bruise. These roses on the ends are a little longer than the 2 I put in the center, but you can kind of see I've repeated it on each quadrant of the arrangement. Now I'm going to fill in with some yellow mums here. These are actually, I'm going to use the rust colored ones on it instead. And I'll put a few yellow ones on at the very last minute. Removing all the foliage and just using small pieces of the mums. We don't need large chunks. And I'm going to add a couple more flowers, and then I'm going to add the fillers, which are going to be the hypericum berries and a few of the solidago, and then we'll be finished with the arrangement. I've got that end. It's just repeating the same flowers on the arrangement in several different places. Grab some hypericum. I like this one. It's got a nice shiny berries on it. I am going to use a little bit bigger pieces on this particular one. The arrangement's a little bigger than the other one. Snip here, poking it in. One down a little bit. It's a little too long. And I know we're almost out of time, so I'm gonna throw a few more little flowers in here, and then we'll have time for questions and answers here in just a second. We'll have about 5 to 10 minutes here. The last one I'm going to add in here is a filler flower. This is Solidago goldenrod. You can get it in your garden or buy it at the store like I did with these. It's a nice little kind of light spray effect going on. I've add a couple more. I've got 2 in there already, and we're going to try to go with either 4 or 5. You can see how nice they sort of open up and spread up and cover a lot of the area of the arrangement too. Find a smaller one here. Yeah, here's a little one, just little pieces, nothing. I'm putting 1 more on each end, and then I'll hold the arrangement up and you can see the finished product on it. If I had a little more time, I would probably maybe build this up with a few more flowers up at home, but today you can get the idea without taking up too much, running over too much. Another little brown one right here. Okay, I'm going to tilt it over and hold it up so you can kind of see the finished product here. And then on the dining room table in the middle, it would be sitting and looking like that. We have about 8 minutes left for questions. If anyone has questions that myself or Sarah can answer, I'd be happy to do that at this time. Thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Christine. Everyone agrees that you are very talented and you shared your expertise with us, and we know that we're going to do a better job at our flower arrangement. Actually, I'm just, not this year because we have this pandemic, but next year I'll cook because I know you don't like to cook, but you
and I'll decorate.
Good, I like that. A good thing that we'll do together. I think that will be perfect to be able to work. But we do have some questions. We don't have a lot of time to answer, but I want to ask some and then remind the audience that we will answer them in our chat or in our question and answer section right. That will put on the website. But I want to know, how do you know when the floral arrangement is done? I'd stop and finish with my wine, but how do you know?
Well, I think it's a fine line between when it's done and when it's overdone. So you just have to kind of keep looking at it and just seeing if it looks balanced and if there's room and space between the flowers. It's sort of like they always say when you're planning an outfit, you should, put on all the jewelry and then take one piece off, and it's right then. So okay. It's a fine line, just kind of trial and error and just kind of looking. It's they're going to open up. They're going to need more space. So when it might look bare in a couple of days, it probably will have opened up and filled up the container in the space. It's good to leave space around things too, especially the focal point. Just leave a little extra space so it stands out and it has greenery kind of framing it. And small pieces, use small pieces of things and add a little bit at a time instead of big chunks going in and looking all mushed together.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's one of the questions. A lot of the questions were about the foam that you're using. So is eco-friendly option for foam?
I'm really not sure. Sarah, do you know?
I'm not using foam.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know what this is made of, and I don't know the process for making it. And I was at the wholesale florist this morning. I didn't particularly notice any eco-friendly option, but I'm not sure about that.
Okay, well, we could use chicken wire as
Yeah,
a couple attendees have suggested, and that's something that I've used in the past. You just have to wear gloves so you don't hurt yourself when you're doing it. And then also you could use a floral fog.
yeah,
A floral fog. That's hard to say too many times in a row.
right,
And you are a little bit more limited with a frog. That is,
right.
but it does give you another option so you don't have to use it. And I
Sure.
think you said it at the very beginning of your presentation, but I think it's important to reiterate that you really don't want to poke too many holes in the foam. And I've heard, you can correct me, that you don't reuse a piece of foam. Once you use it one time, you throw it away.
Basically, I mean, if I were to take this arrangement apart and disassemble it, and we looked at the foam, by the time I'm done, it's got 50 or 60 holes in it, and each one would be pulled out. It would just be destroyed. It would be crumbled up and not hold together and support the flowers. So it's really hard to reuse it. I
Yeah.
suppose if it was something very small, or you could maybe reuse it or add to it, but in general, it gets tore up pretty quickly, so there's nothing to reuse.
Okay, this was a good one because I know this point holds true for pruning. We found out that it's much better to a branch off if you can, rather than prune it with pruners. Can you do that? Is it better, maybe more effective to just break a branch off, or is it better to use a pair of pruners?
I think I prefer to use the pruners with it. You want to have a good sharp end to poke into the floral foam. If you're snapping it or breaking it off, sometimes you get stringy little fibers on the sides
Uh,
that not go in well. So I find it easier just to use the pruners and quickly snip the ends rather than having jagged ones.
okay.
Some stuff like fern maybe will snap easy with your fingernails, but I prefer to just use the clippers or good shears and cut the materials down that way.
Okay, and they do make floral knives too. They,
Yes.
if you don't want it. And I've seen, especially when you're working with roses and cutting on a diagonal, that works out really well. How about the ratio that you use for the bleach to water solution when you're wiping down the pumpkin? Is there a secret to that, or just mix it?
I use one that I use regularly for cleaning. It was already pre-mixed. It was in a squirt bottle that I use in the kitchen all the time.
Okay.
So I'm not sure the ratio to use, or it was just my regular Clorox bleach cleaner that I buy to clean with at home. I sprayed it in the pumpkin, wiped it around. I sprayed the outside of the pumpkin just to kill any bacteria to keep it from rotting or smelling.
Yeah, very good tip. You can do that to gourds and everything else too. So that's great. So I know I've heard before a 1 to 10 ratio, just so you don't
Right.
yourself out when you're spraying. In the bathroom, I make sure all windows are open and do it that way. So again, back to the floral foam. Can you re-wet the floral foam after you've used it one time? You can.
um, Well, I recommend that you re-wet the foam on a regular basis while you have the flowers in it. So that'd be like every day or two, water it, and it soaks up an amazing amount of water in it. There is a block that I put in one of these containers today where I had to re-wet it. Didn't use it, and for
Mhm.
the previous time, I let it dry out and then I re-wet it. It was fine. I hadn't actually put stems in it, but I did wet it. It dried out, and then was able to re-wet it. Yeah.
Okay. So I want you to hold up the pumpkin arrangement again.
Sure, yeah.
Favorite. I have to have a small arrangement on the table because my family wants more food on the table. They always have flowers
This
on.
is the pumpkin arrangement.
It's beautiful. It really is very creative. And
Thanks.
uh, my pumpkin is going to end up in my pies, but if I get an extra one, I would love to
Yeah.
like that.
I
So
felt like this was a pie pumpkin, but it really didn't have any meat when I cut it open. There really wasn't that much flesh to use for pies, so it's perfect for flowers.
perfect for flowers. And we so appreciate the information, the tips and the tricks that you gave us today. And I know our arrangements this holiday are going to be more beautiful from the suggestions that you shared with us. So thank you, Christine. And we are very looking forward to next week when you and Sarah Diggert are going to show us how to make holiday wreaths. So
it's 2 weeks from now on December 3rd, I think it is.
giving
That's the date. Yes.
I'll be eating fondue this year instead of turkey. But thank you so much. We really appreciate it all. And we look forward to seeing more tips from you in the future. So everyone, please enjoy your Thanksgiving. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And we look forward to sharing more things with you. Have a
Thank you.